Hey everyone, welcome back to another exciting special edition of the Liquid Weekly podcast. I'm your host, Karl Meisterheim. With me, as always, the esteemed Taylor Page. Taylor, hello.
Esteemed, thank you. I get like a notch higher all the time. This is great. Thank you.
Yes, I'm working on it. You're working your way up. Taylor, guess what? We have something super secret and special to talk about. Someone from Shopify flew all the way out to our studio online to tell us something. And no, it's not that you won that award that Harshdi has won, but it's something even more special. Can you guess what it is?
I have no idea. Just no clue.
Okay. Me neither. Well, let's ask him. Bret, welcome to the show.
Hello, everyone. My name is Bret. It's good to be here.
It's good to have you. Bret, what is your official title at Shopify?
So I'm a staff engineer at Shopify. I've been primarily the whole time I've been there. I've been on the hydrogen team. We're working on headless projects, but I've also, I've touched all sorts of random things that you might have used across Shopify over the last few years. But that's really been my focus primarily is headless.
Interesting.
It's awesome.
And you reached out to us recently to discuss something very exciting you've been working on. So tell us what you got, Bret.
So we've been working on a really fun project that really it's been a long time coming. When I say a long time coming, Shopify, we're really known for Liquid. Liquid's amazing. Liquid's awesome. We got millions of sites across the internet running on Liquid. I feel like there's so much potential that we have in Liquid and what people use and build on Liquid. But at the same time, like, we also recognize, there's a lot of websites on the internet. There's a lot of stuff all over the internet. You got so many different ways that people build on the internet. And we just started thinking, well, wouldn't it be really, really cool if you could just easily embed Shopify anywhere on the internet? And when I say anywhere on the internet, like just with basic sort of HTML primitives. And so we started this little project a few months back where we're like, well, HTML is a thing. You got a lot of HTML developers out there who know HTML or CSS or basic things. Maybe Liquid's intimidating. Maybe definitely React is intimidating for a huge swath of people. You start dumping in the React ecosystem, and you got Vite and Webpack and who knows what, and it just gets very, very intense very fast. And we see that a lot in headless and hydrogen, for example. But you have so many people that know HTML really, really well. And you have so many people that know CSS really, really well, like total wizards that can do crazy stuff. And so the thought was like, well, why can't we make it easier just to use vanilla HTML to add Shopify to any site? And so we started this project. We're calling it Storefront Components. And really that's what it is. It's just some basic custom elements, really web components that you can easily add to any website. Any website that supports HTML will support this. You just drop the script tag on your page and you add some of these custom elements to the page, style them as you would style normal HTML. And now you got Shopify on any site, which I think there's all sorts of things that you can do with this. And it's kind of fun to kind of just imagine stuff that you can work on with it. But honestly, I don't even think we know what people will do entirely with this. It's just this idea. We want to make it easier to get Shopify anywhere on the web.
That is amazing. Yeah. There's so many questions. Taylor, do you have any questions?
So the first thing that I was thinking of talking about, because like we're talking about like components and initially like I kind of pivoted in my head, at least, I think when I was first learning about this, more to like the enterprise like offering, but this is separate from like the enterprise, right? Because we're talking about like a much larger group of like anybody, right? Like we want to make this accessible just across the board for people. Like if you've got like, so you've got a WordPress site, or you've got like a quick little Astro site or something like that, or whatever, just making it easy to turn that into a Shopify site essentially.
Yeah, like kind of an analogy that we thought of early on is even just like a YouTube embed. So you can embed YouTube anywhere on the internet, and it's easy. You just drop a script sort of thing on the page with a little tag, boom, you got YouTube. I mean, clearly this is a little more involved than that, like, because YouTube is like, you want a consistent experience of this YouTube sort of embed on a site, but with commerce, generally you want more control over the design and the look and the feel to match whatever brand you're going to put it on. But still, the hope was there you don't need to have a crazy amount of experience. You can just drop this in really easily using standard HTML practices. And like you said, that's bigger than just enterprise. I feel like, yeah, that could be useful for enterprise, but also just random people that are coming up with all sorts of crazy ideas, even for small sorts of businesses, small sorts of online store experiences.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and this made me kind of think of like early on. I don't think it's a thing even anymore too. Like with the online storefront, there used to be a plan that was just like a buy button, kind of type thing or whatever. And this is much more robust than that, right? Like this isn't just like I'm like manually copying and pasting like a buy button somewhere just so that way it kicks out to the checkout. Like this is much bigger than that, right?
Yeah, I mean the buy button still exists, and we're not gonna like people can like. There's a lot of sites that use the buy button, and we're not going to turn that off. Like Shopify's we really want to maintain backwards compatibility and allow people to keep using stuff that exists. But at the same time, if you're familiar with the buy button, it's kind of a wonky API, almost like a like poor form of jQuery or something. Like so you want to customize or change things in it, you got to learn this very bespoke API to do so. Mm-hmm. And the hope here was with Storefront Components is here's a vanilla HTML element that will render a text node. Once you have a text node, you can do whatever you want with it. You can wrap it in a div, you can add it in any sort of layout, you can add, it's just standard CSS sorts of stuff that you can do with this element once it's just rendering a text node. And that's I think the key difference here is Buy Button was great for maybe copying and pasting something quickly, but once you're actually using standard web stuff, there's so much potential that comes from that. You don't need to learn something new. You can just immediately use this a lot more quickly. Or even from an LLM perspective, LLMs aren't likely trained on the Buy Button API, whereas standard HTML and CSS stuff, I mean, LLMs are really good at that.
Right. That makes a lot of sense.
Talk a lot about the freedom of how accessible this technology is and how easy it is for folks to get going with it. But I imagine there has to be some constraints around how it works or are there certain things you can or can't do. Can you help us understand maybe some of the gotchas, or is it all just wide open?
Yeah, that's a good question, because a key thing here is this is not something that's going to take off, that's going to supplant Liquid, for example. Sure. Like a huge point of these components is how do I get data out of Shopify and on any HTML site? And now I can use this custom element or this web component that's going to query that data, embed it in some sort of third-party site now that I can just style however I want. With Liquid, that all happens server-side. Inside your Liquid drops, your tags, everything that you're actually rendering in Liquid. Whereas this is entirely client-side. So to make this work, you got to drop a script tag on a page. And then once you have the script tag on the page, then you can write out some HTML. And for that HTML to actually render, that script tag has to load the JavaScript, parse it, then process your custom elements. Then actually underneath the hood, it makes a dynamic Storefront API request based upon the components that you use and what you're actually doing. We're going to make a dynamic request, get all that data, and then it's going to render. But there's an inherent sort of thing going on there where one is happening server side, say Liquid, or even, say you're doing a headless site with Next.js or something else. I don't know. That's going to be largely server side. Storefront Components is inherently client side. These aren't server rendered. And that's a key limitation. And that's why this is a whole new thing that we're just exploring with and trying to figure out how can people embed Shopify across the internet client side. Whereas that's the key limitation, I guess I'm getting at, client side versus server side rendering.
No. So like a good use case would be people who have maybe an existing site and they want to start offering products to some degree or whatever, but they don't want to spin up a completely separate storefront. This would be an easy way for them to start extending products, adding that to whatever. So someone's got like a blog and like a decent following, they start wanting to sell t-shirts. So rather than spin off a completely separate store, like they can just start dropping that in really simply here without having to rely on some of the other things that currently exist for that. This would be a lot more stable. I think that was one of the things that we had talked about as well, as just stability in general, right? because the JavaScript buy button, the SDK, we've got some deprecations that came out in the changelog like not too recently, like I think just this past week or whatever. And they're wanting folks, hey, like you need to migrate to this version 3 for that. And so but this would be obviously something significantly more stable. And I think I caught you had said you're using the Storefront API under the hood to pull everything from here. That's primarily what what you're using for that.
Sorry, can you say that again? I think you blanked out briefly.
Oh, sorry. So when you were talking about this all being client side and what the actual script is doing under the hood, you're using the Storefront API for that. Is that right?
Yes. I mean, and that's one of the, I think the inherent things that's going on here. If I'm going to embed sort of Shopify in a third-party site, I'm limited on what options you have. And that was one of the even motivations to do this in the first place, is we've just found for a lot of people to use GraphQL is really hard. if you just have HTML experience and such, and you just want to pull something on a site, and now we're telling you pull in a GraphQL client, figure out this whole query thing, and then get it to resolve, and then render stuff out from it. That's just a big hurdle. And it's not an insurmountable hurdle, but the point of this is just we want to make it easier to quickly get Shopify on a site without worrying about GraphQL.
Nice.
In terms of Taylor's, shared a potential use case, which was someone who's got something going on the interwebs, and they want to add some e-commerce to it, and so they might see this as a starting point. What sort of setup do they need to do on the Shopify side? Because I'm assuming you need a plan. You necessarily need to set up an online store as a sales channel, or can you just have an account? What are the steps they need to take?
So right now it's a little bit more involved than we want it to be with this initial launch. It's definitely going to become a little bit more simple. But right now, really, like you said, you need a plan. And once you have a plan, you'll probably have most basically an online store set up with that plan. Mm-hmm. But once you have that, if you just right now add the headless channel is only necessary so that you can get a Storefront API token. Once you have a token, you need that token to drop it in on one of the components to say, here's the credentials to actually start making these requests underneath the hood. And I recognize that's a little bit weird for somebody right out the gate, is okay, I've got to add this headless channel. I've got to copy this token out, and then I got to paste it over. It's not crazy. Honestly, I don't love it. And if I had a magic wand, I would definitely make that a little bit simpler in a variety of ways. And we got some ideas coming that will probably come later in the next few months after we have things launched.
Nice.
Do you see this as something that would supplant the need to use headless, or do you see this as a completely different use case, that there still should be folks that go headless versus folks that go this route?
100%. So people that go headless generally go headless just for the sheer complexity or the scale, or when I say scale, I'm talking I'm not talking about amount of users sort of scale. Right. I'm talking about feature scale or flexibility with third-party platforms. You're using multiple CMSs maybe along with Shopify, and there's just all sorts of really crazy complexities going that maybe you can get it set up in the online store, but there's just a huge amount going on. We find that's really where the key use case for headless is. And this is not to supplant that, because if you're doing that for headless already, you might be using Next.js, you might be using Hydrogen, you might be using, something else entirely. But that whole stack is going to be server rendered. That whole stack's going to be generating out sitemaps. It's going to be doing SEO. This is not doing any of that. This is just, here's some web components for you to render Shopify on a site. No sitemaps, no SEO, none of that at all. No meta tags, no. So long answer is definitely not. So I still help out with Hydrogen and headless as well. And multiple people have asked, well, what does this mean for my Hydrogen store? And I'm well, nothing necessarily, unless maybe you've got another blog or something that you easily want to just drop some things on, then great. This might be a way to do that. But
I'm thinking like landing pages too. Like this would make it real easy if you've got just like some little, like I said, little static page builder kind of type thing or whatever. You just want to drop in some quick components or whatever for, a handful of products or whatever. Like this feels like this would be real easy for that.
Yeah, and in my experience in commerce too, sometimes you'll have very ephemeral sites.
Mm-hmm.
Or ephemeral brands that kind of show up and then they disappear. Like, I don't know if you remember back when Apple had their red product line that launched briefly, where they had like different red. It was red, yes.
Yeah, what was that all about?
I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know, but it didn't last long, and that's my point.
Yeah.
It wasn't
That's the point.
intended. It wasn't intended to last long, and so I'm just dreaming this up. Like, this is me saying, maybe here's an opportunity to do this. But part of releasing Storefront Components is we don't entirely anticipate all the ways that they'll be used, but it's a standard web sort of thing. And that's the great thing about the web is you build with the primitives, and like people dream up all sorts of things that you never thought was possible once you actually have like the basic foundation of like HTML, CSS, JavaScript. Like you can do all sorts of crazy stuff. And so I don't entirely know what to expect, but just excited to see what comes out.
Yeah, it feels like this could be like a big thing too, just for even other app devs on Shopify. Like I said, just like even the page builder angle, like or landing pages. Like people already, there's some really good examples of apps out there that just make it super easy to promote products, like really very simply. And this feels like it would make it easy for app devs to be able to kind of consume that and then render something really fast for people just within their app too.
Possibly. I can't speak for that officially, like as far as app dev embedding and such, but it's definitely an interesting angle to look at it.
Yeah. So you keep saying components. Do you have a discrete list of what these components are?
Yeah, so I don't know if you want a demo of any of it at all. Or...
Let's do it.
All right. Let me see if I can share my screen
Yeah,
here.
I don't know how it even works. We've never done that before, have we, Taylor?
Yeah, we've
Should
done
I
some
not
screen
do that?
sharing. Yeah, we've done some screen sharing. It's so like we've got like much more people that listen or watch on YouTube than we do listen on the podcast. So for those of you that are listening on a podcast, go watch it on YouTube or just
I'll describe it.
be along for the
as he does it.
Carl will describe it.
Well, if I
Brett
share
is
my
now
screen,
about to share his window.
There we go.
He's now
Ooh.
sharing a window.
The cursor has moved to the left.
so if I share this, I'll try to explain some of the components as we walk through this.
Awesome.
So what I've
Is that a
shared
picture
here.
of Sarah?
Who's Sarah?
Oh, sorry, someone else. Never mind.
So what I've shared essentially is a playground. What we have with launch is a playground where you can come in here and just try all sorts of things out and see how things work. And so what I have showing at the moment, though, is like an example sort of blog. And again, this is very contrived of what somebody's blog might look like. But at the very bottom, we can show some components. And these components are rendering a few products that maybe you want to purchase. So I can click on that and say view product, show it in a modal, and inside that modal be able to pick an option and add it to cart and go to checkout.
Now the components in here are more than just the buy button, right? Too like this is like as far as what's actually coming in from components.
Yeah, so let's talk through that a little bit. So if we come inside here, a lot of this, there's nothing specific inside here. The very first component, though, that's important, well, even before we get to that, if we look at the very top, we're just loading this script. This is the Storefront Components JS script that's getting loaded. Once that's on the page, there's a few custom elements that are available. The very first one is just Shopify Store. So this one is where you set up the domain that you're going to connect the components to and the public access token. That public access token is what I mentioned earlier. You would copy from the headless channel and paste it in here. And again, this is what I don't love. We got some ideas to make this a little bit simpler so you don't have to worry about going and finding this access token and pasting it in. Separately also, there's the markets configuration for it. So say that you want this data that's rendered on this blog to be Canadian dollars instead of US dollars. You can easily do that by changing the country code inside here as well. So then it'll pull from your...
I'm sorry.
Sorry.
I was going to ask if that would also support, so in like market specific products, like if you were trying to render a series of products or whatever, but they're not available in certain markets, will that support that too, where these just wouldn't render? Or is this primarily for like currency and stuff like that?
Well, it'll have any of the market support that's a part of the Storefront API will be available in here.
Nice. Okay, that's awesome.
That said, though, if we come down a little bit further, how do we actually get the product on the page in the first place? There's another component that's going to be inside here. It's this Shopify context. The Shopify context component just sets up essentially a context of where we're going to get data from Shopify to render something special. And that requires a type. And so this is in this case is a product. It could be a collection. It could be something else. And then a handle. So this is a hard-coded handle that is put in here in this case. So when you say like markets and such, well, if you configured a market with a handle that actually didn't exist for that market, you would get not found in that case right here, because it's a hard-coded handle.
Gotcha.
But that said, so once we have this context set up, everything inside the context, there's a template element. The template element is not commonly used in HTML, but it's actually really useful because everything inside the template element is inert. So it's not actually rendered to the page at all. But we use that to essentially build up a Storefront API query of everything inside the template. It's like all the divs, all the different things that you might be doing inside here. Build a query. Once we have all the data, then we render the template. But inside the template, there's a few specific components that are available. One is this Shopify data. Shopify data is essentially where you're going to render a text node from something from Shopify. So in this case, Shopify data, the element has a query attribute, and inside that query attribute is product.title. That means we're going to render the text node of the title of the product on the page. And we can wrap it in whatever we want and style it however we want. In this case, it's styled uppercase in an H2 tag as Black Sunnies. So I'll pause there. Any questions?
No, this makes sense. Especially initially I was like, oh, is this kind of like going to mimic Liquid a little bit kind of type thing with product.title? But like looking down, it's like we're talking about like Storefront API, so GraphQL, because the selected or first available, I was looking at this other stuff. So that was my only question, but I'm working through it here.
Yeah. I had one question, and maybe it's not a great question, but since this is all client side, when someone views the source of your page, would they be able to see these queries, and would they be able to inject their own content into them and potentially modify the Storefront API call that's being made, or is it transmorgified by your JavaScript somehow, so that's not a possibility?
So literally the context component will parse the contents of the template. So if you have some sort of third-party script or something that is going to execute before the Storefront Components JavaScript and dynamically modify the template, that's totally possible. And then however the template's modified, it's now going to change the query. Okay. And the key there is like, there's not really a security issue in that, in the sense that if you have insecure JavaScript that can do that in the first place, you got bigger problems. That said, though, at the moment, the contents of the template is not reactive. So in this, when I say reactive, if it renders to the page, and then you have something like, I don't know, some JavaScript later that changes the template's not going to re-execute at the moment and refetch new data and update the DOM accordingly. It is not reactive at the moment. It might be down the road. We've kind of talked about use cases to do that, but largely it seemed unnecessary at the start from what we were seeing. Like, again, like if I'm rendering this in a blog, generally this isn't going to be super dynamic as far as what is what's shown on the page with like some sort of JavaScript that's changing it around all over. And kind of one of our main goals of this in general was trying to not require people to use JavaScript, like trying to keep everything HTML first as much as possible. But again, maybe we'll add reactivity to it down the road.
So Karl likes to hear not using JavaScript, so.
Well, yeah, and I was thinking like, okay, here's a stupid use case. I don't know if anyone with you, but let's say that you have like a DIY blog or something, and you have an article about how to build something, and as you're going through the text, you're referencing different materials you might need, supplies you might need. You know, potentially if you could do it reactively someday, you might be able to have a little sidebar that is rendering dynamically the things that you're actually reading about in that moment, in that paragraph you're looking at, changing out the products so they very easily click on it. Again, stupid use case, but stuff like that could be cool.
I agree. I think there possibly are some good use cases we could consider. That's why I say we don't rule out making it reactive. At the moment, it is not. And one of the key things as well, just in general with the library, is we want to keep the amount of JavaScript that we're shipping to the page as minimal as possible. We don't want to be shipping like all of React or a huge virtual DOM necessarily to everybody's site just for some of these little storefront components.
Yeah, makes sense.
So as long as you have those essential elements in there, you can change anything else in the template that you want in terms of the structure and the layout.
Yep. Like there's no opinion on here, so I could just come inside here and I don't know, just delete out even that wrapper, and now that's gone, as you can see right there. There's no opinion on the actual layout of the inside the template. You can just use whatever HTML you want. It's just those moments you want to get some data from Shopify. Use either the Shopify data component. If you want some formatted currency, then you use the Shopify money component. That then's just going to give you a currency value out according to the market's configuration that was defined before. And then also, if you want an image out, use the Shopify media component as well. So
are those the main three?
Those are the main three at the moment. Yes.
Mm-hmm.
At least when I say main three, I'm talking about low-level things. We also have some higher-level ones that do more than just that for you.
Ooh.
So should we jump there?
Yeah,
sure.
Let's talk higher-level stuff that does more for you. That sounds fun.
All right. So let me go to maybe another example here. This is a collection page. So a collection page, just a listing off of different product cards. Mm-hmm. And then you can click on one of those product cards, and then we're going to show you in a modal the product, and then there's a variant selector inside here where you can pick a variant and then add it to cart. So one of these higher level components right here is the variant selection itself. In general, we've went back and forth a lot on how to build a variant selector as a web component or a custom element. We started with this idea of maybe keeping it super low level where you'd have like lots of these like context things and data components, and it like just very, very low level. You have total flexibility of it. It just got really complex and really easy to do it wrong. And then all of a sudden we're like, oh no, like the whole point of this is to try to make it easy.
Make it
and
easy.
This is not easy. and so we went back and forth, and we finally landed on the idea, well, most people, I think, they want some flexibility at the design of the variant selection. Mm-hmm. But beyond that, they like most variant selectors are they're not altogether that crazy different on a lot of sites. I mean, yes, some sites they do get crazy different, but maybe you should be using custom JavaScript and React or something, or who knows what at that point anyway. But for just most use cases, we felt like if we just give you a high level variant selector component with some hooks into the styling, that would cover a huge majority of use cases. And so that's really what we did. So if we look at the code on the left here, there's just simply right here, as you can see, Shopify variant selector. So like that.
I was curious how you were handling variants, and you're talking about like, I'm just going to make it easy. Like, okay, like, because variants are hard, man. Like, it's just like, it's never a simple thing. So, but yeah, it's literally just, here it is. Like Shopify variant selector. That's awesome.
Well, and there's definitely some things that are going on here. This is maybe a little of a hand waving, super simple.
Sure.
So one thing that's really important with variant selection is you change the variant, the image might change.
Right.
And the price might change. The status of whether or not you can actually click add to cart might change based upon availability. All of that might change based upon you changing the variant. So the way that Storefront Components is set up is it's set up with this new field on the Storefront API, selected or first available variant. So as long as you are pulling the price from the selected or first available variant and the image from the selected first available variant or the availability, all of that, that field automatically gets changed or updated when you change an option inside the Shopify variant selector.
That's awesome.
So as long as you're using the price here, with the Shopify money component, that is the underlying selected options are going to change by the variant selector underneath the hood without you even caring or knowing about it, and the price will update accordingly without you thinking. So that's the potential gotcha. It's very simple, but if you're using the price from a different field on the product, then it's not going to update accordingly. You got to use it off the selector or first available variant.
Makes sense.
So I'm sure there's a technical reason you guys went that route, but I'd be curious why that, as opposed to specifying something with a class or a data attribute and indicating that this is the field you want to change.
That's a good question. Part of it was just consistency with the API. So like whenever you're pulling data out of Shopify, you use the query attribute, and then you reference what you're going to query and pull out of it. And so it just felt like it was more consistent just to like do it that way, because this is a field on the Storefront API, and largely the query attribute itself is you're traversing fields on the Storefront API. So we could like hide it away in some other way. But this kind of gets back to, I think, what we were talking about earlier. Like, this isn't just for maybe people really new to Shopify. I feel like this is also for people who actually do know what's going on. And I kind of get nervous if I encapsulate stuff in a way that you don't actually know what's going on. Then when people who really do are power users or really know the Storefront API or stuff like that, now they're potentially struggling to do what they really want because we've kind of maybe abstracted it too much. And that's the trick with abstraction. Did we slice it in the right spot? I hope so. But I guess we'll see how the launch goes.
And then in terms of the way the variant selection renders with those pills, are there any options to adjust that at all, or is that just the way it comes?
That's a great question. So if we come down here, this example here is the variant selector CSS. This example on the left, this is just showing how you can use custom CSS to really target and change how it looks. Out of the box, it supports color swatches. So the default look of a color swatch, if we come to this example, is just using circles and then just sort of pills for other things, other options. But if we come back to see the custom CSS, we've changed it to be no longer be circles, but to be these sort of squares. And we've changed, instead of pills, to have this underline sort of effect. And this is entirely possible not by introducing some new, I don't know, like crazy API with like enumerated sort of ways that you can render stuff, or I don't know, like this is purely done using CSS parts. So CSS parts is a CSS specification where we can target the variant selector, and there are parts that are exposed by the variant selector that you can target and change however you want. So for example, there's a radio part. The radio part, now we can change it. The border radius is now 0 instead of the default border radius. Change the color, change the font size, change all sorts of things about it. There's also a radio selected. So how does the radio look when it's selected? It's the same thing. There's a swatch, a color swatch part. There's a color swatch selected part as well. And the point of exposing these CSS parts is we're going to do all the magic, make sure the HTML all renders properly, here's just some hooks into the CSS for you to style it how you want. And that gives a lot of flexibility. Honestly, it doesn't give complete flexibility, but it gives a fair amount that we're hoping will be sufficient for a lot of use cases.
That's cool. I'm just gonna look that up. I've not used the CSS part stuff before.
I haven't used part either before, so that was interesting to me. I'm like, oh,
you mentioned supporting color. How is that working? Like, does the option have to be named something? Are you picking that up automatically and rendering it as a color swatch? And what to do about people that want swatches for other things, like textures or patterns or stuff that they have in their products that aren't called color, for example?
So this will work automatically if you wire up your admin options for the product with the official color meta fields. So when they're, and I can show you what that looks like maybe in the admin.
We're talking about the standard category meta fields for color.
Yes.
Okay,
yep.
Gotcha.
If you map it to the standard category meta fields for color, and it isn't just even color, you can have an image swatch inside there too. Mm-hmm. This also supports an image swatch at the same time. Nice. So we'll automatically pull those out of the Storefront API. If the swatch exists, we'll render the swatch. If it doesn't exist, then we'll just fall back to a pill. That maybe there's use cases where it's like there's a swatch in there, but you really want it to be a pill and you don't want it to render a swatch. At the moment, we don't support that. We just automatically handle that case for you. That's some of the feedback I think we're looking for at launch, though, is like, where do people need more flexibility than what the default gives? Because we could give an attribute or some way to extend that to force it to render a specific way. We just don't expose that at the moment.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, some kind of hook in or whatever if you have. So, because at least initially when the standard category meta fields rolled out, I was like, oh man, this is amazing. But when they first rolled out, they actually weren't supported with storefront filtering. And so we invested a bunch of time only to find that didn't work for that. It's like, oh shoot. So we created our own. And then they rolled out a couple months later where it does support and filters. Like, God, dang it. And so, but because of this whole back and forth, haven't really used them that extensively. It would be really cool if you could hook in and call out a specific meta field as an option or something like that. Or meta objects. Standard category meta fields are just meta objects, right? Like they're different, but they're used like meta objects. So if we could call out even meta object entries assigned or something like that, that'd be really cool to be able to do that somehow. But I don't know how many people are going to be using that. That is more of a power user advanced use case that maybe not the right fit for something like this.
Yeah, that's one of the things that's on the backlog of things I would love to get to, right. Of just a more in general meta field and meta object support, references, product references, like all sorts of things like that. I really would love to get to. Again, we're kind of see the overall feedback and what people are excited about before we jump on anything like that. But I would love to add that personally.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
So one thing I'm going to jump back to real quick, if we come back to actually, let me come to here. So one thing that we were talking about just a minute ago is this idea of also with the variant selector, maybe you want to disable a button. Like it's not available for sale, so the add to cart button needs to change and no longer be enabled. So another primitive that we have added that is available with Storefront Components is this custom attribute that you can put on any element inside a template, inside the template of a Shopify context. What this essentially is doing is it's a Shopify-attr for Shopify attribute, and then there's another dash, and the point of that next dash is the value after that. In this case, it's disabled. We're going to bind the disabled attribute to this value from the Storefront API. So we're going to get this value out of the Storefront API. In this case, it's product.selected or first available variant.product.available for sale. So we're going to say if that is false, we're going to set the disabled attribute to true or add the disabled attribute to this element. And this works with any attribute. This works with, you could like have an alt attribute or a title attribute or any attribute on standard HTML that you want to get the value out of Shopify and bind it to that attribute.
Nice. That's really handy.
And another use case for that is a product link. So in this case, like originally we had this idea of it actually a product link component. Like there was a full component, but then we're like, wait a second, we already need to figure out this attribute binding. Well, if we can bind an attribute, we don't need a product link component to actually link to the online store. We just bind the href attribute of an anchor tag to the field on the Storefront API, and then we're good to go.
Nice. Now back to say one of the things, get asked about every now and again. So if we're like rendering variants and someone makes a selection, like are we able to do that maybe even too with like, we could hide variants that aren't available if we've got like multiple, rows in that example of like, we've got color and size, someone picks color, and we can, disable like an extra large size that's sold out or whatever for a specific color type. Can you do that with that selector as well?
It's trying to do a lot of that for you.
Yeah.
Out of the box. And so, for example, when I click, where is it? Let's see if I remember which one. I forget which one it is, but one of these is not available. And when you click it, it'll automatically shift the variant to the next selectable one that is available when you switch it, when it loads for the first time. And I mean, there's some kinks that we definitely need to work out with this as well. But that's the hope here, is all those complexities of variant selection you don't need to worry about. This component should do it for you. And then we can render when things are disabled, just add a disabled attribute to it. And then you can target that disabled attribute and style it how you want, just as you would style whether it's selected or not.
Nice. That's awesome. And then everything kicks over because this is a storefront, so everything's pulling in from the store. Everything's pulling in, like when we hit add to cart, like we're going to a Shopify checkout, right? So like this is all still like you have an online store. Just the idea is that we can extend it pretty much anywhere.
Yeah, so if we even do that, another one of the high-level components that is available is a Shopify cart component. Again, this is another one of those that like... that there's this internal debate of, do you expect people to build a whole cart from all these tiny little primitives, or do you give them like a high level thing that just lets them loose very easily? And clearly what won out was, let's make a cart a really simple and easy experience. But then what is the default cart experience, especially because this is embedded on another site? It seemed pretty obvious that it should be more of a mini cart. Sure. It should be in sort of a dialogue sort of experience. So by default, we have the Shopify cart component. And if we search inside here, right here. So again, like a lot of this is just a basic vanilla on-click handler. So when I click this product, we're going to display the modal. But now when I click add to cart, this is inside here. We're just getting that cart element, and there's an add line method on it. And so once I click that, it's added the cart displays. This is the mini cart that shows up. Similarly to the variant selector, you can target the CSS inside the cart with parts to kind of change the look and the feel of the cart. And additionally, the cart that we give you out of the box is using a dialog underneath the hood, which is a native HTML element that gives you just a lot of standard sorts of features because, again, it's a native dialog.
Yeah, which is great from an accessibility standpoint too, but also easy, open, close, very accessible with JavaScript and all that stuff too. So, nice. Can you
Yeah.
change out like the icons and stuff too? Or is that
these
something...
icons? No.
Okay.
Not at the moment. If I click checkout, as you can see now I'm actually at checkout for this mock shop. But let's not actually go check out.
I know one area we often get asked to do in terms of work for people's sites is on the cart. A lot of that is around displaying of discounts, displaying of even banners in the cart, like, this much free shipping or that free gift added, that kind of stuff. Is there any ability for that sort of customization at this point, or is it pretty much just the default price and the image and the quantity?
So any field that exists on the Storefront API, you can pull off and render. So if you have like a compare to price, you can pull that off and reference it inside here just as easy as the normal price field.
Nice.
So really,
you're
you're
a little line through it and say the normal price is actually this, which is a lot. You can do that.
You'd render that yourself, right? With just your own CSS. Like you'd render both and then you'd apply your own styling, basically. Yeah.
Yeah, so like let's even try that. I don't remember off the top of my head. Is it like
Ooh, doing it live.
Yeah, don't mean to put you on the spot, Brett. Sorry.
I don't remember. So now we see two prices are rendering right here, but let's say one was the compare to price. I would just say style, like text decoration. Is it strike through?
Yeah, something like that. I hear there's this cool thing called CSS parts that might be helpful. I don't know.
I forget off the top of my head the exact.
I don't use Tailwind enough to like know it offhand like that. Is it Tailwind? Is that what it is?
I was just using an inline style.
Oh, okay.
But I just don't remember what is the CSS property.
But then in the cart itself, can you do the same thing, or is it just on this component?
Just on the component.
Okay. That was what I was kind of getting at. All right. So no banners, no price changes.
We do. I mean, you could probably explore it and find out that we actually do support you building out your own cart from scratch with context components and all the things. We just don't provide an example for it right now. So if you did do that, you could like completely build your entirely own cart and use your own icons and all the things. It's just not something we like are hardcore showcasing with the launch. If people come back and they're like, we absolutely need customs or more flexibility on the cart, then we'll probably publish an example on how to do that. But at the moment, it's more exercise to the reader to all of a sudden discover, hey, you can have a Shopify context of type product. Oh, wait, you can also have one of type cart and query fields off of it as well.
Nice.
That's cool. And again, not to put you on the spot, but two other things that just popped to mind real quick that people might want to know about are, how about support for either line item attributes or for cart attributes?
Cart attributes or line item attributes, not at the moment. I mean, again, from that default cart experience that you see, that's not inside there. Again, like I said, you could probably discover if it's available from the Storefront API, it's also available if you have a Shopify of context of type cart, and all of a sudden you can kind of build your own.
Hint, hint. I like it. Okay.
Hint, hint. Yeah. Well, and so this is obviously like when we're recording, obviously this is like not publicly available and new or whatever, but this playground is like super cool. And I know y'all have done a lot of stuff with mock.shop to help showcase stuff that you can do with GraphQL and different things like this. Is this going to be publicly available too when this all rolls out for people to play around with it?
Oh, 100%. I feel like
Nice.
this is more, to me, this is almost the product in itself in a lot of ways. Like, even if you don't even use these components for any sort of real thing, the idea that you can just quickly design stuff up and discover what's possible with Shopify and the different data structures that Shopify has, that alone, I think, is super duper powerful in and of itself. Like, so the playground in my mind is absolutely essential for this product.
That's awesome.
Yeah, I was gonna say it's really slick. I like it too.
High praise from Karl. That's
right. I mean, take all the JavaScript stuff out, it would look pretty nice. No,
take all you couldn't.
Brett, I don't know if there's more you wanted to expound upon in your demo or on the product, but I know another area we were potentially interested in touching on is sort of the development process, even at Shopify, around how you guys went from seeing this potential need for customers to getting the project going. If there's any aspect of it you're particularly proud about, always love to hear that kind of stuff from the inside the shop, so to speak.
Yeah, I think Shopify's a really fun place to build products and to build, just to be a tech person, because it's really a tech and product focused company. And you really could see it just for the whole development lifecycle of this product. I mean, this started last summer at Shopify Dev, even a little bit before that, just to people just getting together, brainstorming, wouldn't it be cool if, and even Toby starts talking about it with people, wouldn't it be cool if we could just have basic web components and custom elements that can just render anywhere. I mean, custom elements, web components have been around for a fairly long time. Why doesn't Shopify have anything that can really utilize this in an open way across many platforms? And so it kind of starts off with just that, wouldn't it be cool if? Mm-hmm. And from there, at Shopify, a lot of projects start with just a proof of concept, where somebody just goes and builds something for a week. I've never worked at an organization that has had more hack days projects that just end up in production. I can think of at least 3 of my personal hack days projects that have ended up in production, which is
awesome.
Amazing. So many places I work at, it's you do something for hack days, you throw it away, and then nothing ever happens. But this was a hack days sort of thing that initially started just kind of throwing some examples together. Multiple people built out different versions of it. Just trying out, throwing ideas around. We get feedback all the way up to Toby, all sorts of people from the organization just giving ideas and throwing ideas around. And then we rebuilt it from scratch after all that feedback. And rebuilt it from scratch. We some of the prototypes that we built were just kind of nuts. I'll throw out a few, maybe 1 or 2 examples. One idea we had is if we have a template and the template's inert and we're communicating to Shopify, what if we made the template liquid? Literally inside this custom element, you're embedding liquid on a third-party site, and then we send the liquid back to Shopify and have them render it and send it back. I mean, why not, And so we try that out, and quickly, we run into all sorts of crazy questions. What about iterating over things like lists and stuff like that? And also, it's a subset of liquid. Is it going to confuse the heck out of people? And then also really, is it the target demographic that we're going for that is going to know liquid? That's just going to be embedding this on their blog? I don't know. And so really what won out more than anything was just trying to keep it as much as possible standard HTML, CSS sort of primitives and custom elements. And so we built that, threw it out. But that's what I love about Shopify is, we'll explore an idea, and maybe there's a huge amount of work that goes into that idea, but we're not we don't believe in the sunk cost fallacy here. If it's not the right thing to do, it's not the right thing to do. And so we've cycled a lot on it multiple times. There's been multiple other interesting iterations of what custom elements or web components could look like. And finally just kind of landed on this approach that we have right now, and feeling really good about it, and really excited about it.
Yeah, it's awesome. It's really cool to just think about how flexible that is, anywhere kind of type thing. So it's really neat. Makes sense. Y'all should be proud of that.
Well, I think some places will talk about the idea of a prototype and then you build it for real. But so often the prototype becomes the for real thing really quickly. Imagine doing agency work, building a storefront for a client. I'm just going to show you what it could look like really quickly. And then all of a sudden they see it nope, that's it. We'll ship it. Let's ship it. And then you're like, oh, wait, there's a lot of skeletons in the closet here.
Yep. Yeah.
So I just really enjoyed the idea of, we can prototype it, do all sorts of just crazy things that you would never actually want to do in any sort of real release, but then we learn a lot, and then we can just from the ground up rebuild it from scratch and do it well.
That's awesome.
Yeah, that sounds like an exciting place to be a developer. I remember early on in my career, one of my friends got a job at this big corporation, and the whole thing he worked on for like a quarter was one little piece of a drop-down dialog box. I was like, oh my goodness, that's terrible. So Shopify sounds like a cool place to work. All right, well, with that, I think we'll transition into the third half of our show. We're not doing the changelog this week because Taylor wasn't expecting to do it, but we'll throw some show notes in. But we are going to do picks of the week. What, Taylor, did you want to do one? Did you have one?
No. Well, okay. Like I said, this whole episode was like a changelog. This is like a big announcement. We talked about some changelog-y things, so, you know.
And, we gave Bret a heads up about this, and he was like, guys, this is no problem. I've got like 6 picks of the week already. So, Bret, you want to go first?
Oh, 6 picks of the week. Now you've upped the game here.
Sorry, you said you had 2 earlier, so now we're like really throwing down the gauntlet.
Oh man, I feel like the one pick that everyone's talking about this week, at least, is Microsoft's announcement of rewriting TypeScript on Go. Oh. I don't know if either of you heard about that.
Yeah, I totally whiffed on that. I was like, "What is everyone talking about?" I'm out of it. So like, yeah, what's that about? Microsoft rewriting TypeScript with Go, huh?
Yeah, I think it was a big surprise for a lot of people, especially with the way a lot of tools are being rewritten in Rust right now.
Yeah.
So Microsoft announcing, hey, we're actually rebuilding it in Go. It was kind of just a big wow sort of moment. Pretty cool and pretty exciting.
They've always been countercultural over there. I mean, they're ones to go off, do something strange. It's interesting.
Yeah. So that's a pick. I think it's just because that's what everyone's talking about this week. That's what I'm thinking about. But maybe a more fun pick I'll throw over. I just read about this last night. No, it was yesterday. I'll post it in the chat. Maybe if I can even figure out how to do the chat. Okay, there it is. A fun article I was reading about how AI coding assistant refuses to write code, telling the user to learn to program instead. Like, so I guess our jobs, we're
safe for us now.
Yeah.
Say, I'm not going to answer any of your questions anymore. You go learn.
Oh my gosh, that's amazing.
There you go. Well, thanks. Those are great picks, Bret. You did a wonderful job. I'm surprised they didn't use Ruby instead of Go, but that's okay. I'll do my pick next. So I found this author. His name is Ben McIntyre, and he wrote a bunch of books, historical, nonfiction kind of books. This one's about the SAS, which is the British Special Forces and how they developed in World War II. And anyway, it's a really fun read, and he's a really good author in terms of being able to sort of combine that story about history that's real and not be boring kind of thing. So if you like history and you enjoy reading, check it out. Ben McIntyre. You're shocked, aren't you, Taylor? It was so cerebral. You weren't expecting that. There's no food.
You're always picking stuff like, yeah, you just swing so wildly from like, I'm picking cheese balls, or like, I'm picking this book because I'm well read,
I'm a Renaissance man.
You Neanderthals, and I'm like, I'm over here just, I don't know, like,
go ahead, Taylor.
Got enough pictures in the book, like that's, I gotta stay interested. Honestly, for my pick, I feel like I'm pivoting a little bit here because I was really hoping something would come to me sooner or later rather than later. But this is where we're at. So for mine, I will do. I have been experimenting with different protein powders, and I found one that I really like. So they're a Shopify shop. It's called Naked Nutrition. So the idea being, it doesn't have a bunch of extra junk in it that you find with a lot of other protein, and those sorts of things or whatever. I've been really trying to focus on upping my protein intake because evaluating my diet and you're looking at your macronutrients. Apparently, I don't get enough protein really, and so I've been supplementing with that. And it's pretty good stuff. They're a little bit pricier, but it's because it's like good, high quality products. And again, they're on Shopify, so Go check them out.
Yeah,
So-
I'll have to check that out.
If we see you at editions.dev, are you going to be like so ripped? And
I'm really happy to hear that you said that you're talking about going to editions.
I said if,
Karl.
Yeah, if.
It's gonna happen. Brett, are you gonna be there? Well, I mean, I know y'all have your Shopify stuff, but will you be at the edition stuff at all?
Yes,
Cool.
I plan on being at editions.dev. Really excited to meet up with all sorts of folks.
That's awesome, man. I'll have to come.
You
I'll have to come find you. Say hi.
Didn't say us. He said all sorts of folks, but I think
No,
it's
you,
implied.
you both.
He's gonna be actively avoiding. He's like, listen, guys from the podcast. Get out
No,
of
no,
here.
no. Definitely,
Anyway.
definitely. I'll buy you a drink on
Yeah.
from the concierge or
From the concierge.
there.
So you go get one. I got this for you.
Thanks.
Really looking forward to it. So awesome.
Well, thank you, Brett. This has been amazing. And what an honor, too, just to have you guys reach out to us and be willing to share this with us so that we can share
Yeah,
it with
thank
you,
you.
our audience. It's been very interesting and can't wait to see it come out.
Awesome. Thank you both as well for all the questions, and it's great chatting.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, you wasted another perfectly good hour. You could have been coding, listening to the Liquid Weekly podcast. Thanks for joining us. We'll see you on the next one. And Brett, have a good day. Enjoy summer for the 1 month it lasts in Maine.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.